Hey folks, thanks for hitting that play button and welcome to another episode of Weapons and Warfare. For Straight Arrow News, I'm your host, Ryan Robertson. And this week we're taking a deep dive, pun very much intended, on the future of autonomy at sea. So we're catching up on some stories we've covered in previous episodes, like the Manta 4 built by Kraken, Anduril's Dive XL, and the Boeing Orca. Plus, we'll get an up-close look at Blue Halo's Mission Specialist Defender, a cutting-edge vehicle designed to tackle the most demanding underwater tasks with both precision and control. To start this week, we're talking national defense and how those that operate in the maritime space are leaning on industry leaders to bring lethality, survivability, and affordability to the fight. For almost as long as people have been setting sail, they have understood the importance of sea power. From the ancient Greeks to the Cold War to today, time and again, pioneers of naval warfare have helped shape and reshape the world as we know it. Now, with the advent of autonomous capabilities and the emergence of artificial intelligence in the battle space, naval warfare is on the edge of another generational shift. So much so that this year's Sea Air Space event, put on by the Navy League, featured a panel of senior military leadership and an industry partner to talk about where things stand and where they need to go.
The way the Navy has gotten after this is really recognizing that AI is a bit like electricity. It's very ubiquitous. Its use case can be applied across so many different domains, from warfighting to our readiness piece, to really the business of how we operate the Navy. There's so many facets where we feel like we need to weave this technology into the very fabric of how we do business and how we approach warfighting.
Chief of Naval Research, Rear Admiral Kurt Rotenhouse, says the branch's approach focuses on identifying problems they want AI to solve, rather than using it just to use it.
What are the most important and critical warfighting gaps, readiness gaps that we want to leverage the technology as established by the CNO and the NAV plan?
It's an evolution the Marine Corps' Director of Capabilities Development and Integration says has been on the agenda of General Eric Smith, as well as his predecessors.
And the Commandant's intent is that we are fighting at the tactical edge in that environment. And we're providing capability to sense, make sense, and deliver long-range fires, or provide what's needed to our joint partners and our combined partners to deliver their long-range fires.
Major General Farrell Sullivan says it's the next logical step in the Corps' embrace of AI and autonomous projects, like their autonomous low-profile vessel nicknamed the Narco Boat, something we reported on in the early days of Weapons and Warfare. The ALPV is used to get critical supplies to forward-deployed Marines.
Now we're moving towards sensors that we are employing at sea, not to compete with the Navy, but to fill in where the Navy may not be. And I don't mean that as a shot across your bow in any way, shape, or form. I mean it completely as a teammate and partner. But that's a business that the Marine Corps has not been in the past.
The addition of autonomous vehicles piloted by AI is a development that both branches are leaning on their industry partners to find the right blend of Marines, sailors, and technology. Helping drive the push towards the new era of defense is former Navy SEAL and friend of the show, Brandon Singh.
Certainly, defense technology was not a word that I ever heard in 2015. It's great to see where we are today and the role that defense tech companies are playing, helping great customers like our Coast Guard, our Marine Corps, and our Navy solve some of their most challenging problems.
The co-founder and president of Shield AI has a long and proven track record of developing AI systems like HiveMind, the AI pilot that autonomously flew then Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall in an F-16. Singh's company also built AI-piloted platforms that were used in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and most recently in Israel to help free hostages held in Gaza. He says it's just the first step in bringing more mass to the fight.
I want to put 1 million AI pilots into the customer's hands in the next 10 years. When I look at 2045, I think that becomes 100 million AI pilots. And so that means It's a complete fundamental transformation of how a military thinks about their military, how a military thinks about their force structure. When you are no longer limited by the number of personnel that you have in your military, what kind of power can you project? What kind of adversaries can you deter? That is why AI and autonomy is the most transformational capability of our time.
Something the panel emphasized was the employment of AI systems doesn't necessarily mean the purchase of hardware. Case in point, the US Coast Guard. They've partnered with Shield AI to utilize their VBAT platform as part of a contractor-owned, contractor-operated service. This means Shield AI retains ownership and operation of the VBATs while providing the Coast Guard with intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance services.
I want to buy a capability. I don't necessarily want to buy a product. If I think about I need C2 data on the water, I don't necessarily need to own the vehicle that is delivering that. Yes, sometimes we will have to own the vehicle because of some unique constraint, but if I'm looking to get sensor data, if you can put a sensor in a place where I need data from it, I am probably happier to buy that data from you than I am to buy the platform that you're using to deliver it.
Evidence of the DoD's investment in AI is not hard to find. A report by Executive Gov shows the allocation of $1.1 billion in fiscal year 2023, $1.8 billion in 2024, and proposes the same for 2025. And I know some of you are thinking this all sounds sort of like the beginning of Terminator's Skynet, but that's a notion General Sullivan says doesn't quite match reality.
Now, there may be a day that comes where we do go fully autonomous and there's less human in the loop, but that's not where we are today, and that's not what we intend to do.
All right, folks, it's time now for Comms Check, where we follow up on some stories that we've previously reported on. Once again, I'm joined by senior producer / super producer Brett Baker. Brett, we went full nautical for this episode. Was that because we both live in landlocked states and you're just missing the water? What gives?
Yeah, I'm in a triple landlocked state, so yes, I'm really missing the water. No, it just kind of seemed right. We had the right content, and I think, it's a very important topic, obviously, for what we're doing. So yeah, it just kind of seemed right.
All right, absolutely. Well, this week we are refreshing some reporting that we've done on platforms like USVs, ASVs, UUVs, AUVs, and a USSV, an uncrewed surface subsurface vessel. Brett, I don't know about you, but can I just say I think we have way too many acronyms in this game. They don't always translate well or the same. The U could mean unmanned or uncrewed, depending on whether you have a Department of Defense or a Ministry of Defense. So audience, if you're confused by all the SVs, AUVs, SUASVs, and all that stuff, we're with you. Right, Brett?
Yeah. V could be vessel, could be vehicle. Yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities. And actually, I think I have two in this that we're going to talk about that I didn't list in the whole thing that you just read off.
Nice. Good deal. All right. Well, we lead off with the K4 Manta. We reported on this back in February of 24 after discovering a very, Thunderbirds Are Go promotional video.
Alpha Bravo 7, this is Blue Cruiser. Targets identified in the port. Activating Operation Manta.
Built by the Kraken technology group, the K4 Manta is touted as an underwater stealth drone and is classified as an USSV, an uncrewed surface subsurface vessel. While there's no publicly disclosed information confirming a direct sale of the K4 Manta to a specific military customer, the K4 Manta has been involved in several military-related activities and developments. We just found out, Brett, recently the Area 51 facility that they call their production facility just came online.
Yeah, so, well, the hardware, we don't maybe know exactly what's happening with the hardware. We do know that behind the scenes, there are things happening, and they're making deals with other partners. So, while the Manta may still live in its glorious animation that I originally found, stuff's happening with project. I will say one thing I really kind of discovered in researching and trying to update some of these is how slow some of these projects move. You think, 6 months later, they'll have new news. Not
No,
necessarily.
not
So,
necessarily.
but it was a good one to bring back just because it was so visual and the promo was so memorable. But K4 or Kraken rather, they do have a lot of stuff going on and cooking with other partners that we're very familiar with.
Right. Yeah. So NATO, they're the NATO funding or innovation fund is throwing money towards this project. One thing that I forgot about was the Kraken has marsupial operations, is what they call it, which is it comes up to the surface and can launch an aerial drone, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, they've got their hands in a lot of stuff, and we're actually going to hear from Blue Halo later in this episode. So, not a surprise that Kraken would pair up with those guys.
Next up, a contractor that is seemingly everywhere all at once, Anduril and their Dive XL, aka the Ghost Shark. We first reported on this extra-large autonomous undersea vehicle, yes, an XL AUV, back in September, shortly after the second prototype showed up in the US. Well, since then, it's been on a bit of a ghost, but we have learned a few things. So one of the things I think we should just kind of lay out right now is the Anduril calls it the Dive XL, but it's part of the Royal Australian Navy's Ghost Shark program. It's the program of record for that. So it's, Anduril called it the Dive XL. Australia calls it the Ghost Shark. Here in America, we kind of call it both.
Yeah, that stuff does get confusing, I will admit.
One of the cool things about the Ghost Shark, though, Brett, was back in December, it had a 100-hour mission, like a continuous mission for 100 hours. And at some point this year, they're planning a 1,000-mile voyage, continuous underwater operation for 1,000 miles. So Anduril, the Royal Australian Navy, definitely making some headways, as it were, with this craft.
For sure. And it's just kind of another indication of, how fast Anduril is moving with all facets of their business. I think most people, when they think Anduril, are thinking the drones and things that are all above ground and in the air that you can see. But clearly, they've partnered with some good folks out of Australia to bring this thing to the front. And yeah, it's just kind of just another case of how fast these guys are moving. It's really kind of breathtaking when you sit down and you look at just a short timeline that these guys have been players and how much they're bringing to the table. It's really impressive. Palmer Luckey is definitely changing the game as far as like being a startup and trying to break into some of that prime business.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's broken in. I don't think we had a story a couple weeks ago. Like, at what point is Anduril no longer a startup? I think they've passed that line, wherever that line exists. So last but certainly not least, Boeing's Orca, which we first reported on in December of last year. The Orca, an XL UUV, that's right, an extra-large unmanned undersea vehicle, is seen by some as part of the puzzle that is the Navy's effort to modernize. But there has been some problems for the program. It's been delayed by several years. The Navy got their first delivery this summer. They called it the XLE-1. They're supposed to be getting several more testing platforms of the Orca this year. Brett, in your mind, does the Navy need both the Dive XL and the Orca?
Well, I think the Orca has the advantage of already kind of being in the loop, and it's got probably more hands-on experience with the Navy. There's originally supposed to build 5. I think they expanded that out to 6, which included like a new one or an extra one for more testing. Although, and I think too, the Orca is able to carry quite a bit more. And right now, at least as far as what we know, it's got a much longer range. So I would think that, I don't know. I have to think the Orca has still got to have a role in whatever the Navy wants to do. One of the great things, though, about this new trend in how we're going about building, national defense is that, yes, these things are still expensive. But relatively speaking, to a Virginia-class submarine, it's not expensive at all. So, right. and the ability to reproduce them and get them built is a lot smaller window than it is for a submarine. So I have to think there's probably still a place for both. But Yeah, they've got a lot of time invested in the Orca too. I kind of think of it like, and it obviously hasn't suffered the same fate as the M10 Booker, but
Right.
I think of it as like they've already got that time invested in it. That would be a real shame if it was just to drop off the table now.
And to your point, talking about payload capacity and range, reading the tea leaves here, not being a part of the program office, it seems like these are designed for very different missions as well. The Orca was primarily thought of as a mine-laying submarine, so laying the mines in that payload might be a little bit different, right, than shooting torpedoes. So different mission sets. It might not be a this or that. It might be a this and that sort of solution for the Navy, but all to create the hellscape of drones that Admiral Paparo was talking about in the Western Pacific and the Indo-Pacific, where China has been so aggressive. All right, that's going to do it for this week's Comms Check. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us once again, Brett. Really like the way that these segments are playing out, so please join us for the next episode as well.
See you soon.
If you paid attention in grade school, you know 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water. But when we think about weapons used for national defense, the natural inclination is to think of ground or air-based systems. And while it's true most conflicts do take place on land, there is plenty of area in that 71% of water-covered Earth for an adversary to look for an advantage. And that's where our weapon of the week comes in. Meet the Mission Specialist Defender, built by Video Ray, a company owned by Blue Halo, which we've featured on the show before. The Defender is the U.S. Navy's program of record for next-generation explosive ordnance disposal response. It can also be used for mobile diving, salvage missions, and security.
If you think in terms of find, fix, and finish, right? So find, you're looking for things in the water. And then once you've found something, now you have to figure out what it is, right? Identify it. Is it a lobster pot or is it a mine? And it has sonars and video capabilities so that you're able to map the bottom and figure out what these things are. Now you also are going to geo-reference it, right? Geolocate it, that's fixed. So now you know where it is on the ocean floor and in what depth of water. And then you can finish, right? Which is some type of effect. That could be to go and put a diver on it, or it could be to place an explosive charge or some type of kinetic indefector to neutralize the mine.
It can run off the ship's power or with two different battery solutions. Eric Werstrom, the VP of Sales and Business Development for Video Ray, says one of the selling points for the Defender is ease of operation.
We really designed in user functionality, both in terms of operations and its maintainability. So if you can fly an iPhone, you can fly a Mission Specialist Defender. The graphic user interface is designed to be very intuitive and very useful, because we know that that is one of 8 missions that a sailor is going to have to do that day. They don't need a PhD in marine robotics to be able to operate the vehicle.
Wistrom says another benefit of the Defender, it's easy to fix and maintain.
We have designed this thing to be very modular so that if anything were to fail in it, a couple of mechanical fasteners, an electrical connector, and a quick sync with an app, and you've got it back in service and in the water where it's meant to be.
Built to operate at nearly 1,000 feet below the water's surface, it can go as deep as 3,200 feet.
We have some 500 different applications that have been integrated into the Mission Specialist platform. So if there is a use case underwater, we likely have a solution. We're focused on the platform. We make it very easy for our industry partners to be able to integrate and both in terms of software applications and sensors and kinetic effectors.
Another likely selling point for the Navy when it came to inking a deal for the Defender program, its proven track record. The British and Australian navies have been using the ROV since 2017.
All opinions expressed in this segment are solely the opinions of the contributors.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us this week on Weapons and Warfare. Quick reminder to please like and subscribe to our social media feeds and download the Straight Arrow News app today if you have not already. Lots of good stuff on the app. For my wrap this week, I want to spend a few minutes talking about the importance of following a process, or letting a process play out. We hear it said in sports all the time. Athletes need to trust the process if they want to see the results they desire. In journalism, the same idea holds true when waiting for an investigation to play out. Doesn't really matter what sort of investigation we're talking about, it will take time for investigators to do their jobs and more time for the findings to be made public. So, responsible journalists need to recognize when certain processes are taking place and provide their audiences with the proper context so that no one jumps to conclusions. For instance, in the case of Operation Midnight Hammer, when the U.S. bombed Iran's nuclear sites, President Trump said within minutes of the bombs dropping that
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
A statement which may prove true, but there's no way the president, or really anyone else, could have known at the time if the sites were indeed completely destroyed. In the days after the strike, a report from one of the 18 U.S. intelligence agencies cast doubt on whether the strikes were effective. But the report came out so early in the investigative process, it was given a low confidence ranking. So clearly, more investigation is and was needed. The process needs to play out. But that did not stop the back and forth between jilted media figures and the White House when both sides jumped to conclusions about an issue that both sides knew would take more time to settle. When I was a news director for a few different local media outlets, I always told my reporters I'd rather be second and right than first and wrong. In the digital world, we crave instant gratification, but the truth is important enough that we should be willing to wait for it and stop jumping to conclusions. For senior producer Brett Baker, video editor Brian Spencer, and graphics artist Dakota Patillo, I'm Ryan Robertson for Straight Arrow News, signing off.